welcome to Criminalist Behavior Podcast, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of Louisiana's history and current, most chilling true crime stories. I will be guiding you through the darkness of these crimes and all of those involved. Each week, we dig deep on those forgotten crimes or those crimes currently happening with the underlying legends that continue to haunt us. So lean in, listen, and get ready, because true crime is anything but ordinary. Stay with me as we unravel what happened in all these mysteries. So today we're going to be on episode number 37, and this is the case about Glenn Sullivan, aka the first man in Louisiana that was sentenced to undergo a physical castration for his crime. If this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Sarah Soudier, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the show, and I really hope you enjoy it. So, off the bat, trigger warning. This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. So, this case is going to be a little different because there's not too much about these types of cases unless the victim wants to be known. And for more discretion, this particular case involves a minor, age 14 to be exact. So there's not too much about this. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the 411 on some of the laws that just took into effect. And, well, one started in like 2008, but one literally started this year, 2024, actually a month ago. So I'm going to detail that as well, and then ask for y'all discretion in what y'all about to hear, okay? So, Glenn Sullivan Sr., he was born on March 13th, 1970, and do not quote me on this because things were very hard to find on Mr. Glenn Sullivan, and I'm sure there's more than one person with that name, but to my due diligence, I do believe he was born to Mother Beryl Elise Sullivan and Randolph Sullivan. And he had a son, Glenn Sullivan Jr., which is also not a good person. So, background. Some people would want to know Glenn Sullivan and what might possess a history on his current predicament, on this crime that he committed, and what type of person was he? Was he a businessman, an activist, or was he just caught at the wrong place at the wrong time? Understanding his past would be paramount to piecing together the motivations behind this crime. But there's little to be known in regards to Glenn Sullivan and his past. And I dug deep, y'all. So if I come up with more information later on, maybe I'll do an update on this case. Because anytime I do a case and I see there's an update on it, I always do a updated episode and reintroduce the original case and give the update, of course. So, in July of 2022, in Livingston Parish in Louisiana, a young woman walked into the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office and told Detective Ryan Bernard that Glenn Sullivan Sr. had raped her multiple times when she was just 14 years old. The Livingston Parish District Attorney's Office said in a statement that one of the rapes actually led to the victim becoming pregnant. And a DNA test was ordered on that particular pregnancy. And it was during the course of the investigation and the DNA test that Glenn did prove to be the father of this young child's baby. The rape happened in a small town home of the victim's home located in Springfield, Louisiana. Now, Springfield, Louisiana is a small town within Livingston Parish, and it's about 50 miles east of Baton Rouge. So, detectives with the investigation, they were gathering evidence, and through the scrutiny of all the evidence, they went through the medical reports with the DNA, eyewitness accounts, forensic evidence, and all the correspondences between all the individuals that were involved. Each piece of the evidence contributed to reconstructing the sequence of events and illuminating the motives that were propelled against him in this particular crime. There's not particularly any type of motive besides sexual gratitude, obviously. Now, he never really admitted to the motive being that. It's just what we all just pieced together. And he literally acted upon this motive. There wasn't any other motive besides the sexual gratitude. Detectives also learned that Glenn P. Sullivan Sr. had also groomed the victim and used threats of violence against her and her family to prevent the young woman from disclosing the rapes. So this POS raped this young child, and yes, I'm going to say young child. 14 is still young and is considered a child, adolescent as you will, but impregnated her and then threatened her and her family if she told, as any typical monster would do. It's just so unheard of. The fact that this young woman, after being threatened and impregnated, and this happened multiple times, like, she walked herself into the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office and made this report. Where are the parents? Did she not feel comfortable talking to her parents in regards to this, and she just took it upon herself to go in there? Did she tell her parents and her parents just not react to it, or thought she was lying and wanted attention? Because most of these crimes do go unreported as means of retaliation as such in this case, or in reference to people just not believing the victim. So what really transpired? What was there? An allegation, misconduct, unfortunate accident, mysterious disappearance? No, none of that happened, as far as I'm aware of, within Glenn's life and early development, as well as this young victim's. All it was is, like I said, rape and obviously impregnation. Can you imagine a 14-year-old? I mean, yes, I know people get married at a young age in the 60s, 70s, whatever, but we're talking 2024. I don't want to see it. I'm not here for it. 16 and pregnant, that's an abomination. Should not be promoting that on TV. I think it's just stupid. Anyways, the nature of this incident would significantly shape how investigators approached this particular crime. Glenn Patrick Sullivan was arrested on March 19th, 2019, and charged with a felony monitoring. He was also charged with accessory theft in excess of $1,000, but less than $5,000, and that bail was listed at $10,000. Yeah, low as a mofo. The 21st Judicial District Attorney Scott M. Perilou reported that Glenn Sullivan Sr. pled guilty on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, to 4 counts of second-degree rape. Now, if you're living under a shell and you didn't realize that there's different types of rape, as far as the degrees or the seriousness, let me break this down for you. So, simple rape or normal rape, let me put it that way. Normal rape is a form of sexual assault, but not all sexual assault is rape. The term rape is often used as a legal definition to specifically include sexual penetration without the consent. But a simple rape definition occurs when the victim is not able to provide consent because he or she is intoxicated or otherwise incapacitated, when the alleged offender knew that the victim was intoxicated and incapacitated, and the victim is either permanently or temporarily unable to understand what is happening. So that is simple rape. Forcible rape, as identified in the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program, is the choral knowledge of a female forcibly held against her will, or his. Attempts of assaults to commit rape by force or threat of force are also included. Statutory rape doesn't have to have force, and other sex offenses are also excluded. Now, like I said, Glenn P. Sullivan did plead guilty to 4 counts of second-degree rape. And if you're wondering what second-degree rape is rape committed when the anal, oral, or vaginal sexual intercourse is deemed to be without the lawful consent of the victim. Third-degree rape is when he or she engages in sexual intercourse with another person without such person's consent. Now, I know it cannot be confusing, but basically, Glenn pled guilty to second-degree rape, which is, again, the rape committed when the anal, oral, or vaginal sexual intercourse is deemed to be without consent. So it either he stuck his piece, as you will, in her anal cavity, her oral cavity, or her vaginal cavity. Okay? So, District Attorney Scott Parish commended the work of the Detective Ryan Bernard with the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office and Assistant District Attorney Brad Cassio, who prosecuted the case. Parish also applauded the young victim and her bravery in coming forward and telling the truth within the face of the threats against her. In a quote by Attorney Scott M. Parish in a news release, he stated the following: "So many of these types of cases go unreported because of fear. The strength it must have taken for this young woman to tell the truth in the face of threats and adversity is truly incredible." And I second that because, like I said, a lot of these cases do go underreported. And it's just a fear, or because that victim is ashamed of what happened. They don't want anybody to look at them different, but at the same time, they feel like they need protection because this happened to them. It's just a horrible thing to go through. So, Glenn Sullivan Sr., age 54 at this time, went before Livingston Parish Judge William Dykes on April 17th, 2024. As previously discussed, he pled guilty to 4 counts of second-degree rape, and the judge sentenced him to 50 years with the Louisiana Department of Corrections. And in addition to having to serve 50 years in prison, the plea entered required Glenn Sullivan to be physically castrated. Physically castrated. Sullivan's sentence will be served without the possibility of parole, probation, or suspension. So he has to serve 50 years flat. And it was ordered that he be physically castrated. Now, there's many differences of different types of castration, and I'm going to get into all that as well. But, again, Glenn Sullivan Sr. is 54 years old at the time of his sentencing. The judge handed him down a 50-year sentence that could not be lessened within time, early release, none of that good stuff. So that would make Glenn Sullivan 104 years old when he gets out of prison, if he gets out of prison for that matter, okay? Keep that in mind, okay? So, the nature of the crime. At the center of this disturbing incident lies the act of physical castration, a procedure that is not only irreversible, but fraught with ethical considerations. Such an act committed on another individual could stem from various motives ranging from revenge, misguided notions of justice, or even an attempt to exert control. The motivations of this perpetrator would warrant in-depth investigation in regards to ordering this physical castration. And according to District Attorney Brad Cassio, sex crimes against juveniles are the most malicious crimes that he has to prosecute. And he intends on using every tool the legislature is willing to give him, including physical castration, to seek justice for the children in every community. So, the public and ethical considerations in this matter, cases such as one, led to a public outcry. They had differences, some people for it, some people against it, as always, and you're entitled to your opinion. But at the same time, this led to debates on morality, justice, and the legal system's role in protecting the vulnerable individuals. And the broader societal implications of such a crime could spark conversations on sexual violence, personal autonomy, and human rights. So that's what was being argued is physical castration something that should have been handed down in sentencing? So with the victim, We must not overlook that this victim, whose life has been irrevocably altered by this egregious act, a psychological profile and exploration of this particular victim's background and how she is reacting according to this crime. I mean, how did she know Glenn Sullivan? Was Glenn Sullivan part of the family? Because, like I said, little is known about the victim, and it's because of her age, of course. But, I mean, is this a family member? Is this a friend of the family? How well does she know him? I mean, these are questions that come in theory that everyone is eagerly trying to figure out, but at the same time, I mean, does it really matter how she knew him? No. So, the legal framework on this situation, the legal ramifications of this particular crime within the state of Louisiana would be to intricate, as laws concerning bodily autonomy, assault, and emotional distress have to be examined. The judicial response to the case could hinge upon various factors, including the sickening nature of this particular crime and the public sentiment surrounding it. Lastly, according to this big picture that we all need to look at, we must consider the context in which such crimes unfold. This is something that happens all the time. You hear about rape or molestation or some to that nature. I mean, it happens. And most of the time it's with a family member or someone very close to the family. I mean, it's ridiculous at how many cases they have. How many sexual predators are out there, sexual offenders. It's just very freaking disturbing. So, often, and this is from attorney Brad Cassio, he stated, often the law restricts us to a punishment that sometimes he feels is not enough. People who do these unimaginable things to our children deserve the worst punishment we can give. Cassio said he had enough. Not only does he believe that he deserves, that Glenn P. Sullivan Sr. deserves that particular punishment, but he honestly believes he deserves much worse. And Cassio also thinks that this should send a message to others before they try to commit this heinous crime. And Cassio, as well as I, and anybody in their right sound mind, should always not tolerate the abuse to children, or any other one else for that matter. Not just children, but most importantly children, right? So this is the fourth castration sentence that DA Cassio has gotten as a prosecutor, which is pretty crazy, right? The first three required a chemical castration, whereas this will be the first physical castration under Cassio's rulings. So, according to the sentencing that was handed to Glenn P. Sullivan Sr., he must be castrated before his 50-year sentence is up and prior to his release. So, you remember how I said he's 54 years old? And he just has to be castrated before the end of his sentencing? Yeah. He will be 104 years old. So, are they really going to do the castration? That's what's in my mind. Like, really? Are they really going to castrate him? It's all good on paper, right? But, I mean, unless the mother effer is going to get castrated within the next couple years, does it really even matter? Louisiana's new surgical castration law allows judges to sentence certain sex offenders to surgical castration as punishment for their crimes. So, who can be sentenced for surgical castration? This law applies to adults convicted of first or second degree aggravated rape, incest, or molestation of a child under the age of 13. And judges can order a castration after the offender has completed their prison term and within a week of their release. So what happens if the offender refuses the surgical castration? If the offender refuses the procedure, they will serve an additional 3 to 5 years in prison. You think they give a shit? I mean, most of these people are serving a good amount of time in prison. You think they actually give two shits if you add 3 or 5 more years in order to keep their manhood and probably come out and fucking reoffend? So this law of the whole surgical castration took place on August 1st, 2024. So this is a very, very new law in Louisiana. Again, August 1st, 2024 is when this law of surgical castration and or physical castration came into play. The law is gender neutral and is the first of its kind in the United States. It is similar to other states that allow chemical castration for child rapists, but surgical castration is a more evasive procedure. Proponents of the law believe it would deter people from committing these crimes. However, opponents argue that it is cruel and an unusual punishment. Some also question whether it is warranted and if other alternatives like medication should be considered. Others point out that Louisiana has one of the highest wrongful conviction rates in the country and fear what could happen to someone who is actually not guilty. Again, they could refuse it and serve an additional 3 to 5 years. So, that argument is invalid. Just serve the extra 3 to 5 years, and then you ain't got nothing to worry about. So, in 2008, a Louisiana law passed, and it says that men convicted of certain rape offenses may be sentenced to chemical castration. And that's when the chemical castration... I'm sorry, somebody's alarm is going off. And it's very loud, so I apologize if you hear that. I will try to remove that. But apparently they don't know how to work their horn. So, yeah. Anyways, like I was saying, in 2008, a Louisiana law came into effect, and it stated that men convicted of certain rape offenses may be sentenced to chemical castration. They can also elect to be physically castrated. And DA Parish stated that Sullivan's plea requires he be physically castrated. The process will be carried out by the state's Department of Corrections, and according to the law, it cannot be conducted more than a week before a person's prison sentence ends. So, cannot be conducted more than a week before the end of the person's prison sentence. So that means 104 years old is whenever Glenn P. Sullivan Sr. would be physically castrated. So yeah, he agreed to this bullshit. He don't give a damn. He ain't gonna live that damn long. Most people don't. I mean, come on now. So, this means Sullivan wouldn't be castrated until a week before the end of his 50-year sentence, when he will be more than 100 years old. Louisiana is now the first state to allow surgical castration to be used as a punishment for sex crimes under a new law signed by Republican Governor Jeff Landry. This law, which will be in effect as of August 1st, 2024, allows judges to order people that are found guilty of certain sex crimes against minors to undergo surgical castration. So in 2008, the chemical castration law was passed in Louisiana, and then in August 1st, 2004 is whenever the surgical and or physical castration law was passed in Louisiana. So, the use of surgical castration as a punishment is a permanent procedure that involves the surgical removal of the testicles or ovaries, ostensibly to stop the production of sex hormones. And it is very rare elsewhere around the world. The Czech Republic, Madagascar, and state in Nigeria have such laws on the books that have been strongly criticized by the Amnesty International and other human rights organizations. According to Amnesty International Organization, on January 24th, 2024, the bill intended to insert chemical and surgical castration into the Legacy Penal Code as punishment for individuals found guilty of rape against minors was deposited before the Legacy National Assembly for adoption. The National Assembly adopted it on February 2nd, 2024, and the Senate adopted it on February 7th, 2024. And this bill is to go through the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, before the President, Andrew Rajoelina, and this will be signed into the new amendments as a law. So, Amnesty International strongly urges the Meglisi authorities to bring the amendments in line with human rights standards while prioritizing the well-being, rights, and needs of the survivors in these acts. Several U.S. states, including Louisiana, as well as other countries, have laws allowing for the use of chemical castration, a procedure that uses pharmaceutical drugs to reduce the offender's sex drive for certain sex crimes. And the passage of this bill in Louisiana literally went all across the newspaper headlines, and it was causing a stir amongst criminal defense attorneys, advocates, and medical experts, raising serious concerns around ethics and constitutionality of the law and questions over whether this punishment would actually make a difference in reducing sex crimes. Let me stop right here right quick. In the Bible, if you're religious, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? In the olden days, and in some places in the world today, there are severe punishments, like you get caught stealing, your fingers or your hand get chopped off. If you rape somebody, you're probably dead, or they're going to do the same to you. So, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? So, does it really matter? Does it really matter? These people who have their opinions against it, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, and like I'm producing mine right now, right? It literally, I think it makes a difference if the severity of the punishment goes with the crime. Because I kid you not, if you got your hand cut off because you stole something, I promise you, your ass is not going to go steal nothing again. I mean, seriously, think about this shit. I mean, so a criminal defense attorney from New Orleans, Gwyneth O'Neill, states that it's very confusing in addition to being absolutely unprecedented and draconian and overkill, according to this new law in effect. And one of the drafters of the bill, Democratic State Representative Delisha Boyd, told NPR the law will be a strong deterrent for the would-be child abusers, and it would protect the children. And again, they have the certain stipulations in place. And in Glenn P. Sullivan Sr.'s case, physical castration is what was ordered, right? But he has a 50-year sentence. 104 years old, because he's 54 at the time of his sentencing. He is not actually going to get physically castrated. So what is the uproar about? Now, if you are giving a 5-year sentence, a 9-year sentence, a 10-year sentence, which... don't even get me started on that. Just don't even get me started on that, because, no. Some people get 6 months. Like, it's fucking disturbing. But I could see the uproar in that. But, I mean, you did a crime, you pay the fine. Like, regardless if it's money, if it's physical castration, chemical castration, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, don't do the fucking crime. Then you ain't got nothing to hoop and holler about. So what does the law exactly say? The law as written targets offenders found guilty of aggravated sex crimes, including rape, incest, or molestation against a child under the age of 13. The punishment will be brought in certain cases and at a judge's discretion, and the surgery will be completed by a physician. It is not going to be completed by the bailiff or the shucks. I can't even think. What's the person that rules the fucking prison, bro? Like, warden. Oh my god, how the hell I couldn't think of that. The warden's not gonna go up in there and physically castrate this man, okay? A physician's gonna freaking do it, okay? So it's all safe, it's all cool, whatever. Even though, in my opinion, chop the bitch off with a fucking hacksaw. I don't even give a damn. Anyways, that's harder to do for women though, so... I mean, it's easy for a man to get castrated, but a woman, I mean, it takes invasive procedures. So, anyways, it will also require a court-appointed medical expert to determine whether the offender is the right candidate for the surgery. So, It's got to go through 3 different types of processes before this is even handed down in a sentencing. The judge has to want to do it. And if the judge does do it, then it has to be done by a physician. So that physician has to agree to do it. And a court-appointed medical expert has to determine whether or not that offender is a good candidate for that particular surgery. Chemical castration, surgical castration, or physical castration. So, yeah. So an offender could refuse to get the surgery, but would then be sentenced an additional 3 to 5 years without the possibility of getting out early. The law doesn't allow anyone under the age of 17 found guilty of certain aggravated sex crimes to receive this punishment. So, you have to be 18 or older for this punishment to be considered legal. And according to Boyd, which is the Democratic state representative, she was inspired to propose this bill after receiving a disturbing article from a local newspaper about a 51-year-old man who was arrested for alleged rape of a 12-year-old. 51-year-old man raping a fucking 12-year-old. That is your granddaughter, you fucking sick-ass mother... Sorry. I digress. Whew. Let me breathe. Woo, sigh. People like this just get underneath my fucking skin. I can't tolerate the fucking stupidity and the ignorance of these people who want to defend this motherfucker for his heinous act. Like, there is nothing in the world that is worse than harming a fucking innocent child. Taking that child's security and safety and trust away. And seeing this world as a good place. That shit comes down and it fucks up a person's mind. Not only in that moment, but for the rest of their damn lives. This does not have to fucking happen. And if you do this, and I think it should be done immediately, just like I don't believe people on death row should be sitting on death row for 110 years. Now, I do believe that they should be able to exhaust all their appeals and all that good stuff, because there are a lot of people that are innocent that's serving on death row. So, I get that. But pieces of shit that are actually found guilty and there's evidence and admit to this fucking crime, yeah, I have no fucking words. You can't be saved, Booska. You can't. And all the crime and punishment should be done to you. It should. Some of the critics say, that's a cruel and unusual punishment. Well, Boyd disagrees, as well as I, because I think the cruel and unusual punishment was the rape that child just fucking had to endure. And Democratic Representative Boyd says she believes the criticism she received from the opponents of the law is from people who haven't closely read the law and think it forces a prisoner to undergo this procedure. And she's probably right. The only thing that they see is physical castration, surgical castration. They don't read the fine print that you have to be over the age of 17. Have the judge want to sentence that first and foremost. Not alone a physician willing to undergo the procedure, and expert witness to determine if this procedure is right for this particular individual. So she has a point here. And I'm sure that they not all taking that into consideration. They didn't read the fine print of the fucking law. They just said, castration, nope, it's inhumane. Nope, can't do it. But yet, you're the first to say that animals should be spayed or neutered. What's the fucking difference between a human and an animal? I mean, I believe we're all hand in hand. Some people don't have that same opinion, and like I said, we all able to determine our own opinions, but that is mine. So, the reasons why people commit sex offenses are so much more complicated than something that can be fixed with castration, according to Helmus, which is an associate professor of School of Criminology at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. So, Helmus is against physical castration because he thinks that people who commit offenses are much more complicated than a physical castration would take. So I think he's going on a mental approach, which obviously he has a point. Helmuth did research that focused on offender risk assessments and on men who have committed sexual offenses or with intimate partner violence. And according to Helmuth, they stated, in our minds, it's easy to link castrations to the problem that they're exhibiting and think that'll fix it. But it's taking a lot of leaps and logic that are not warranted and not considering other alternatives, like the use of medication. So she is one to try to use medication. So that is the part of the chemical castration. They use a medication to make the sex hormones decrease. So she thinks that the medication approach is better than the surgical castration or the physical castration. This law is part of the state's tough on crime efforts. In February, the state legislature held a special session on the crime and passed several bills that Governor Landry and lawmakers said would bring justice to crime victims and their families. The member station reported that the series tough on crime bills passed the session will likely reshape the landscape of criminal punishment in Louisiana for years to come. The bills expanded death penalty methods, effectively eliminated parole for anyone convicted after August 1st, lowered the amount of good time credit, and a few exceptions, and established harsher penalties for some crimes, which I believe should be done. Now, I do know there are several times that a person can be convicted for a crime that they did not commit. Normally, at least I know in the state of Louisiana and in most parts of the United States for that matter, a woman can cry rape on a man and that man is automatically proven guilty, even though the law states a person who is convicted of a person is innocent until proven guilty. They have to be convicted of a crime. No. Boo, you're automatically arrested. You sent your ass to jail or prison, whatever the case, until your court date. And better luck getting into that prison, because people who are rapists, molesters, guess what? Your ass is getting tore up in prison or in the jail, because ain't nobody like a rapist or a molester, because it's fucking sickening and should not be done. So their ass gets beat. And if they're falsely accused, then that's just all types of fucking wrong. All types of fucking wrong. That woman should be held the same accountability as that man's sentencing. I agree. Or vice versa, if it is a woman getting accused. But 90% of the time it's a man. Let's be real. Look at the statistics. Really. Seriously. If a woman lies and gets a person convicted or arrested for a crime that they did not commit, like rape or molestation, they should be serving the same sentencing that their alleged suspect had to serve. I bet you the false allegations against shit would actually decrease, because if your ass gets caught, guess what? Bye-bye, Booska. Bye-bye. Okay? So, in this instance, there are concerns over the discriminatory application of the law. If it is challenged, O'Neill, the New Orleans-based criminal defense attorney, stated that it's highly likely the law would be deemed unconstitutional under the 8th Amendment's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. And in case y'all living underneath a fucking shell or just don't pay attention to shit, the 8th Amendment means excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines be imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments be inflicted. So, that is this criminal defense attorney's argument against this new law, the 8th Amendment. So, O'Neill also stated that surgical castration is generally considered, or was considered, to be sort of like the paradigmatic example of cruel and unusual punishment, because it's a form of physical mutilation. It's barbaric. And O'Neill feels that the law could be applied in a discriminatory way, the same way the death penalty and other criminal justice policies tend to be. And she stated, like, another reason that she believes this is due to racial disparity. Now, there is a lot of racial disparity. I don't give a damn where you at in the United States or anywhere in this world for that matter. Racial discrimination and disparity is something that is always going to be an issue because people don't treat their fucking kids right growing up. They teach this shit and it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. They teach this because racism is not something that you are born with. It's something that is learned. It's something that is taught to someone, okay? The racial disparity thing that O'Neill is bringing up is stating that race matters in our criminal legal system. It affects how likely you are to be pulled over by police, how likely you are to be released or detained in a pretrial situation, how likely the state is to seek the death penalty, and how severely you are sentenced. The NACDL has committed to examining race as an issue within the criminal justice context. So, with this being said, the race in the criminal legal system, how this comes into play. After the Civil War, Southern states embraced criminal justice as a means to reimpose racial control over African Americans. This includes the passing of black codes, and I know you can't see me, but I'm using quotations, black codes, and later Jim Crow laws. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. It is this loophole in the 13th Amendment that Southern states exploited in passing the black codes and in setting up new economic and labor systems that relied on the arrest and imprisonment of African Americans. For example, these particular codes, the black codes, implemented vagrancy laws that criminalized unemployment, resulting in African Americans returning to slave-like environments through forced labor and convict leasing. Violation of the black codes also resulted in offenders having to pay fines, and those who were unable to be paid for these crimes were forced by the state into labor until they worked off their fines. So why is this important, right? This is important because this is the same criminal legal system that was developed after the Civil War to reimpose control over all the African Americans, and it still exists today. Now, this ain't the case for every place in the world, right? But let's be real. Let's be real. The white man, and I'm white, and I don't believe this in any way, but the white man in general, okay, not speaking upon myself, but the fucking white man in general. The white man in general, if they're racial or all this good shit, will pull over a black man just for walking on the side of the fucking road because they don't like how they walking. They will implant evidence on something because they having a fucking badass day. And they don't like you because of the color of your damn skin. Baby, don't even get me started on that bullshit because that pisses me off to no end. Who gives a damn the color of somebody's skin? They bleed and breathe just like you. What gives you right to determine they shouldn't be allowed to breathe the same air as you? They shouldn't be free. Who gives you that authority? You're not the almighty. You nut shit to determine who should live and who should die, bruh. Get the fuck over it. Get over yourself because that's bullshit. So, like I said, this is still happening. Imprisonment has been and continues to be used as a weapon to control communities of color in ways that aren't used in other communities. We see this in crack cocaine sentencing disparity, the over-policing of black communities, the excessive criminal fines and fees imposed on defendants, and a bail system that relies on payment to secure one's freedom. Black men comprise about 13% of the general population, but about 35% of those 13% are incarcerated. Now, we're not going to sit here and argue it's because they black, they in jail, and we're not going to sit there and argue that, okay? We're not. But did they actually commit those crimes, or were they planted? Now, they do have a lot of bad people in the world, and no, it's not just by race, because look, they got some white folks, they got some black folks, they got some red, green, purple, orange folks, whatever you want to call these other races, right? They got all of them in the system. But the statistics states there's more black African Americans, whatever you want to call it, more African Americans in the prison system than there are of any other race. Black women comprise about 44% of the incarcerated women rate, but only make up about 13% of the female U.S. population. So again, they're both black men, black women make up about 26% of the population. And given this, there's about 79% of them. 79% of that 26% are incarcerated. Think about that. You cannot tell me that every single one of them people, individuals, are guilty of the crimes that they are accused of committing. You can't tell me that. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of them that are, but y'all gotta wake up and realize racial discrimination and disparity is actually still happening. We all just don't want to see it because it doesn't affect us. It doesn't affect the white man. It only affects the white man whenever you see black power or whatever, but yet they're stating black power. They're getting involved in their community to decrease the white man's power because they have no fucking power. Everyone should have it. Let's not get started on the women, just regardless of race. Women's power in this world we live in, because we still don't have as much power as the man does. We still look down upon. But this particular case involved a physical castration because this motherfucker pled guilty to 4 counts of second-degree rape of this young 14-year-old child and impregnated her at 14 years old and pregnant due to a rape. How you think that affects this young woman? I don't give a damn if he's white, black, green, yellow, orange, or purple. Which he's a white man. This motherfucker should be underneath the goddamn jail if you ask me. Physical castration? That's nothing. Because he's not going to get the damn thing. Because it happens a week before he gets released. And he's going to be 104 years old. Okay, boo? No. So, let's get back into what the hell is happening, right? Could this law impact repeat offenses, right? Part of the motivation behind this law was to cut down on the possibility of someone reoffending. But the research on sexual offense recidivism rates is tough to paraphrase. The research on surgical castration and its effect only has been done on people who have voluntarily undergone the procedure out of concern they will harm again. That impact the analysis because they are individuals who are already working to not reoffend. So it doesn't actually help. It doesn't prevent them because they're already working on not being able to reoffend. Okay? It's more imposed on those who are more likely to reoffend and aren't working on not reoffending because they don't give two shits about it. They just want their sexual gratification, get the fuck on. But that's the only case people know about. If you combine the different studies over multiple countries and jurisdiction and different types of settings, 5-year sexual recidivism rates are generally expected to be in the range of 5 to 10%. And lifetime rates are maybe around 15 to 20%. And Helmuth also stated the following: we know that not all sex offenders get reported to police for a variety of reasons. And so we know that sexual recidivism rates are to some degree an underestimate because not everything comes to the attention of police. However, she stated, it is hard to know how much that actually going to affect reoffending rates. So ultimately, there very limited research on effectiveness of any type of castration with people who committed these particular offenses, these sex crimes, right? The whole point of castration is that it's supposed to reduce this sex drive. If you're pursuing castration to reduce sexual offense rates, you're making an assumption that they're committing a sexual offense because of a high sex drive or high testosterone rates in the first place. But this is not always the motivation for committing these offenses, according to Helmuth. And she has a point, because you could rape because you have something wrong with you inside your head mentally. It's not because you have a high sex drive or high testosterone. Or maybe you just can't get it from anywhere else, you know what I'm saying? And you're just taking your shot, even though it's completely fucking wrong. 100%. Don't do it, because, oh, no. So, it posed a question. If that's not the reason why they're committing sex offenses, then reducing their testosterone is going to do nothing to reduce that risk. You need to look at other means, such as what's really going on, what's making them cause this. So surgical castration doesn't mean someone cannot be sexually aroused, or in the case of men, get an erection or ejaculate. Not to mention, there is still psychological arousal and urges that are not addressed within this procedure. And Helmuth stated, even if castrated, they can later take medications to reduce or reverse the effects of some types of castration and still be able to increase their sex drive. So castration isn't a foolproof way of getting rid of their sex drive. This is her argument now. She also said that what we know, especially for people who commit sexual offenses against children, they don't need an erection to be able to commit many types of these sex offenses that they commit. True statement, because rape isn't always because a person has an erection. Maybe they got just this violent streak, because you don't always have to rape them with your penis or use of any other whatever. You could use any object, whatever, which is just so sickening just to think of. But that's pretty much what's going on. So let's see the castration process. Let me break this down. Now, there's, like I said, there's literally several types of castration. Okay. Castration is any action, surgical or chemical, by which an individual loses the use of the gonads, particularly testicles and or ovaries in women. Surgical castration consists in bilateral orchiectomy, and chemical castration uses pharmaceutical drugs to deactivate the testes and or ovaries. Human castration is a practice known from the Sumerian time as cruel torture. In history, it has been a religious practice or instrument to obtain eunuch slaves or white voices. The earliest records for intentional human castration to produce eunuchs are from the Sumerian city of Lagash in the 21st century BC. Ancient Greeks and ancient Romans used this approach to produce eunuch slaves. During the Byzantine Empire, it was considered as a punishment. In Arabian countries, castration started to be used to obtain faithful harem guardians from 750 AD. And during the Ottoman Empire, the imperial harem was a powerful institution of the Sultan. So from the late 16th century, castration was carried out in Italy to preserve the unbroken male voice into adult life. In 1941, Huggins and Hodges demonstrated control of prostate cancer growth by androgens and showed that there is no better way to achieve temporary control of prostate cancer growth than androgen deprivation, also known as AD. The earliest method of AD is represented by the bilateral orchiectomy, which means a definitive therapy for the patient. So, people wonder, is there a reversal for castration? Yes and no. It just depends on the type of castration, right? In 1944, treatment with dithal was described as first method of reversible castration. In 1979, Scully showed that advanced prostate cancer patients treated with daily doses of LHRH agonists experienced a 75% decrease in serum testosterone levels and marked a reduction in cancer-associated bone pain. Medical castration by means of medroxyprogesterone acetate or cyproterone acetate is also used for convicted rapists or sex offenders in some countries. Although more expensive, medical castration nowadays is a standard considering its hypothetical reversible effect and psychological trauma related to the surgery. So, with all of that, there is not really much that you can actually do to reverse castration. And the difference between castration versus a vasectomy: castration involves the complete removal of the testes, while a vasectomy targets the vas deferens, leaving the testicles in place. This makes vasectomy a less invasive and more appealing option for males seeking sterilization. So, they go hand in hand, but one, you actually remove the testes, and the other, you just remove the vas deferens, the tube that connects into the penis and the scrotum that releases the sperm. Okay? Yes, a little anatomy of this. So the surgical castration process, in case you're wondering what this is, right? During the surgical castration, a small incision is made into the scrotum under anesthesia, and both the testes are removed. Sometimes prosthetics are placed into the scrotum to replace these testes. Following surgical castration, due to the removal of testes, the person cannot father any children. Due to the lack of testosterone following the procedure, the person loses a sex drive, which is the whole point of this whole surgical castration and or physical castration under this new law passed August 1st, 2024. It has been observed that the sexual drive is not lost immediately in all those that are castrated, and also the sexual drive can be restored by taking testosterone injections. The surgical castration may not be the treatment of choice in habitual sex offenders, according to this particular article that I read. So, what they're saying is, regardless if a person is surgically castrated or physically castrated, which again, I'm going to get to the definition of what the physical castration is versus the surgical castration. But during the surgical castration, they state that a person can restore their testosterone levels and their sex drive by taking injections of testosterone. So that approach, if a offender gets out, can be taken and they could potentially reoffend. Okay? So the surgical castration is also known as a bilateral orchiectomy, removal of both testes, or oophorectomy, which is removal of the ovaries. Side effects of this procedure include changes in physical appearance. The person loses body hair and the skin softens to that in females. The body weight also may increase. Changes in organs. The calcium content of the bones may be reduced. The hemoglobin levels in the blood may come down, and proteins from the body may also be lost. Psychologically, the most disastrous effects following surgical castration can take place in a person's mind. Surgical castration is a permanent procedure, which not only affects the sexual function of a male, but also causes changes in appearance in important parts of the body. The person may get depressed and or even attempt suicide. It is used to habitual sexual offenders, raising ethical issues. On the other hand, the use of medical castration, which causes temporary effects, may be more justifiable in these cases, which I agree 100%. So, healing from castration. So, the orchiectomy is a surgical remove to one or both of the testicles. Most of the time this is done for cancer patients, but like I said, in 2008, that law was passed for criminals who committing acts under the age of 17. Okay, under the age of 13. You should be able to do most of your normal activities 2 to 3 weeks, except for those that require a lot of physical effort. It is important to avoid straining with bowel movements and doing heavy lifting while recovering. The swelling usually goes down within 2 or 4 weeks, and you may need pain medication at this time. So, in conclusion, while the particulars of the Louisiana physical castration case remain in complexity, representing a confluence of psychological, ethical, and legal elements, a thorough and methodological investigation could bring forth the truth. It is our duty as seekers of knowledge and justice to ensure that such transgressions do not remain unpunished, and that we endeavor to understand the underlying themes that drive individuals to commit these heinous acts. We shall pursue the truth with tenacity of hounds upon the scent. And Assistant District Attorney Brad Cassio, who prosecuted this particular case with Glenn P. Sullivan Sr., He stated, "I have been receiving more and more files involving the sexual abuse of children. As a father, it's difficult not to put yourself in the victim's family's shoes. I rarely go more than a few days without working on a file like this one. I just feel it's time to fight back stronger." Yes, yes, yes. Cassio, I am with you 100. We need to fight back. We need to prevent this from ever occurring again. Now, there are people that are just fucking sick. But we need to show them that we're cracking down. We're cracking down. So what are your thoughts? So, like I said, Sullivan must be castrated before 50-year sentence is up and can only be done up to tops a week prior to his release. If you remember, he's 54 years old, so if he serves his full sentence, as this is imminent due to the fact the judge ordered it will be served without the possibility of parole, probation, or suspension, then that would make him 104 years old before he gets out. Like, how is this physical castration decision going to take place on the likelihood of Sullivan dying before being released? I am interested to know what you think. Are you against this whole surgical, physical, or chemical castration? Do you think that it should be imposed sooner than a week before they are allowed to get out, especially in these 50-year handed down sentencings? I am interested to know. Please comment, send an email, criminalbehaviorpodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. All your local podcast apps. Like, comment. Let me know what you think. I'm interested to know. We also have that website at www.criminalistbehavior-louisianatruecrimepodcast.com. Yes, I do know that is very, very much a lot to remember, but it's going to be in the show notes, so you could click on it and you could go to our website, right? So let me know if you want to be a host on the show. I'm all for it. You want a shout out? Let me know, because I'm all for it. I am very curious. I'm really anxious to hear from any of my fans or listeners of the show, and I want to get y'all involved. That is the whole point of all of this. Let's get involved. Whether it's just for you to come on the show, whether it's just you want to comment or say something, if you have a case you want me to cover. And it doesn't have to be in Louisiana, because I will cover stuff outside of Louisiana. I just mostly focus on Louisiana. So, yeah, get with me. Also, next week, October 22nd, 2024, we are going to find out who is the winner in the true crime, aka documentary series of the Women Podcasting Award. Yes, I will post this as soon as I know. But anyways, I am excited because obviously I was selected as a nominee, but I really, really hope, because nothing but good things could come. It could help with sponsors. Like I said, if you want to sponsor the show, hey, shout me out. Again, you could email us at criminalbehaviorpodcast@gmail.com, or go to our website, www.criminalist-behavior-louisianatruecrimepodcast.com, or messages anywhere on your podcast apps. Also, please rate and review on iTunes, oh my God, or any of your podcast apps. It will really, really help the show. If you enjoyed our show, again, like us, subscribe, hit that love, whatever, comment button. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, anywhere you listen to your lovely podcasts. And be sure to come back next week for a discussion on a mason jar beating and shooting in Louisiana. Until then, this is your host, Sarah Sidier, and don't forget to leave that review and subscribe and or follow to Criminalist Behavior, Louisiana True Crime Podcast. Thank y'all, and I really, really, really hope y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.